There is a lot to talk about in the state of Indiana, but we're going to start with Notre Dame because this is, of course, the most notable topic of the weekend as Notre Dame advances to the College Football Playoff National Championship. They did it. They got there. They beat Penn State. They elevated. It's one thing to beat Indiana. It's another very big thing to beat Georgia. And then they also beat Penn State on top of that. That's 3 quality wins all in the playoffs. Penn State hadn't really beaten anyone in the playoffs is obviously a tough opponent, but they had to play SMU and Boise State. That's not the same road as Indiana and Georgia. Notre Dame has won all 3 games. They go to the national championship game. They will play Ohio State. They did it battered and bruised, and that's what's maybe the most impressive about this game. I'm sitting there, I'm watching it, and I'm thinking about how if they get through this would be one of the most hard-fought playoff battles we have ever seen because there were a litany of injuries all game long. Riley Leonard exited for the end of the first half. He did return despite his ailments, but he was out for a time. There was a moment where we thought it was going to have to be the backup quarterback in there for the majority of the game. Bo Collins went out as well. Anthony Knapp, the offensive tackle, he went down. He will be out for the championship as well. Despite every setback, somehow the Irish prevailed. And that's what we're going to talk about right here is really how they did that, how they won this game, because it wasn't won the way they typically win. Penn State stopped the run. They got right to Jeremiah Love. They really kept him quiet. But the secondary on the other side of the ball really proved itself as the team's biggest strength, right? We know that the Fighting Irish have a top 5 pass defense. We know that they have one of the best secondaries in the country, even despite the injuries that they've suffered in that area of the field. Drew Aller threw at just a 52% completion rate. He had 135 yards and an interception. Notre Dame really locked away the weaker outside receiver group that Penn State has, right? Penn State doesn't have the receivers that Ohio State does. They don't even really have the receivers that Georgia does. Penn State, that area of the field, those receivers, they've been trying to employ them in these big games a little bit more. Drew Aller throwing the ball down the field. And this was the one criticism of Penn State for a long time, was that they didn't have one major downfield target. And for the most part, they still don't. Drew Aller was chucking the ball up, right, trying to hit some of those receivers down the field throughout the playoffs, and it wasn't really working for them. And Notre Dame just completely took that out of the question and reduced this game to just 2 factors, and that was Tyler Warren in the middle of the field and those 2 running backs, them being Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton. Tyler Warren ended up being largely the entire passing offense. He was targeted 7 times. He caught 6 of those passes for 75 yards. He averaged 12.5 yards per catch, well over a first down, a grab. He made up over half of the team's receiving yards as a whole, and the running backs, of course, count in that. Notre Dame did just enough to keep Tyler Warren at bay, but they really made him the only target that Drew Aller truly had. They, again, locked away those receivers. There was no threat from anyone throwing the ball other than Tyler Warren. And Notre Dame did a great job isolating Tyler Warren as that one effective target for Drew Aller. And then from there, still were able to play good defense and kept Tyler Warren at bay for the most part. He didn't cross the 100-yard mark. He also did not score. Tyler Warren didn't. So Drew Aller, across the board, right, had to go somewhere else with the football. He wasn't going to be able to throw to his receivers because they were perfectly covered. He could try to force the ball to Tyler Warren, and he did, and he had success there. But Tyler Warren did not make up any of their touchdowns in this game. That takes us to the running game for Penn State between Kaytron Allen and Nick Singleton, and they fueled most of the offense themselves. The team rushed for 200 yards. Singleton had 3 touchdowns. Notre Dame across the board just did just enough to make this happen, right? Drew Aller in this game, and in most big games this season, Drew Aller has had 1 or 2 options. Hand the ball off or throw it to Tyler Warren, right? Because those receivers are locked away, and Drew Aller is not enough of a dual-threat quarterback to be able to really do damage running the ball. It's Tyler Warren or it's those running backs. And Notre Dame did just enough to, in addition to keeping those receivers locked away, limit Tyler Warren and limit those running backs. I guess they didn't really limit Nick Singleton. He had, I believe, 84 yards and, of course, those 3 touchdowns. Warren and the run game, they still rolled. Aller could still force the ball to Warren for some big yardages. He really bailed the Nittany Lions out in a lot of ways. Tyler Warren did. But they were inhibited by the Notre Dame defense just enough. And that put Notre Dame in the position where they forced Aller to make a play down the field late in the game. They played just good enough defense to keep them out of the end zones and keep them out of the red zone, to keep them out of field goal range. Like, keep forcing them to kick field goals, keep forcing them to punts, keep keeping them out of the end zone as much as you possibly can, and that put them in that position late in the game where it's tied, and you say, okay, Drew Aller, now here's a situation, a scenario where you can skip the whole game, fast forward to this moment. Can you make a play? And Drew Aller making a play down the field typically is not a recipe for success, and that's exactly what happened. Again, we have another turnover. We have an interception from a top 5 turnover margin team. They pick off Aller in the final minutes. They set up the game-winning field goal, and that play meant a lot across the board, right? That interception meant a lot. It arguably won them the game outside of the field goal. But all night, the defense was keeping that Penn State offense just enough inhibited, just enough limited, just enough at bay to keep them out of triple yardage range, really, and put them in an advantageous place, right? Penn State, I think Tyler Warren has 100 yards and Nick Singleton has 100 yards. Penn State wins that game because I don't know where those 50 yards would have been. I don't know where, or I suppose it's less than 50, that margin. I don't know where those 50 yards would have been placed throughout the game, but I'm sure it would have led to just another first down or just a touchdown, right, or anything like that. I think if either one of them gets to triple digits in terms of yards, Penn State probably wins this game because they, in the margins, find the plays that they need to make, find the yards, find the end zone, find the points that they would need to make up for this loss. And Notre Dame just kept them both well under 100 yards. Locked away those receivers. Drew Aller either had to hand it off, and that was working very well, or throw it to Tyler Warren, which was working okay. Notre Dame played great defense. They kept them all at bay. The special teams showed up, right? They've had kicking problems. We were concerned, but they won the game kicking. This is exactly the type of situation that also contributed to doubt on Notre Dame. Notre Dame was doubted for a lot of reasons, but one of them was because they thought, well, if you're in the playoffs and you're the 7 seed, if you're going to make a run of the championship, you're probably going to have to be in some close games, and Notre Dame has been. At least this was their first one, but true close games down to the wire where you need to kick a field goal, this is exactly that situation, and they were chalked up to be a team that couldn't hit the field goal down by 1, but they did. They hit the field goal, tied, and they won the game. The special teams showed up. They came from behind, which was really important to note too. Notre Dame isn't a team that can really come from behind, because Riley Leonard is similar to Drew Aller in the sense that he doesn't really have a lot of success throwing the ball down the field, and Notre Dame hasn't had very much experience coming from behind. The only time they were truly down was against Northern Illinois, and we, of course, saw how that game went. And so, again, the defense, limiting Penn State just enough to put the Notre Dame offense in the position to just do effectively the same thing they did against Georgia. They don't have to score every drive because the defense is doing great things. They don't have to score a touchdown every single drive because the defense is doing great things. They cooked 2 field goals in this game and still managed to win. Made them both, of course. And so Notre Dame, the defense put them in that position, and the offense just maintaining. The offense maintaining and the defense playing a fantastic game put them in that position late in the game to force Drew Aller to be the one to make the big throw down the field, and he just couldn't. And that's exactly, really, to me, how Notre Dame won, is they put themselves in that position for that interception to mean so much. And they did so, in my opinion, primarily with defense. But they were down 10-0 to start this game. They were down 10-3 at halftime, right? Penn State had a fantastic start. I really thought it was over for Notre Dame. I picked Penn State to win. I was wrong. But when I picked Penn State and they went up 10-0, I was feeling pretty good about that prediction, even though I was rooting for Notre Dame. And they came from behind. With injuries, with setbacks, down by 10, Notre Dame came back and they managed to win this game, and they did it in fantastic, spectacular fashion. And now they reload and load up for Ohio State, which is going to be a much more difficult game. Marcus Freeman has elevated Notre Dame to a level they had not previously seen already, right? They beat Georgia, they beat Penn State. That's 2 top 4 teams. So Notre Dame's number 5 in the country, right? At least they were coming into the playoffs. Theoretically, out of the 14 playoff, you could argue that the committee would have changed or slightly altered the way that they rank these teams. If there was only 4 teams in, maybe Notre Dame gets in over Penn State. I personally don't think so. And regardless, Notre Dame's at number 5, and then they beat the number 4 team in the country. They beat the number 2 team in the country, and now they have an opportunity to play. I suppose Ohio State's number 6 team in the country at the moment. Regardless, Notre Dame, they're going to have Ohio State, who appears to be world beaters. It's a 1 game. It's a one-game situation and all bets are off, right? It's just the one game. It's the 60 minutes between Notre Dame and Ohio State. Both teams are clearly, in my opinion, capable of winning a national championship. Only one of them will actually do it, and I'm very excited to see which one of these teams actually pulls it out. We're going to preview that game next or later this week. We're going to preview that game on Thursday. But Ohio State, right? Fantastic team, much more talented than the Notre Dame. It's going to be, in really any team Notre Dame has played in the playoffs so far, it's going to be a very difficult test. But in this game already, just by qualifying for the national championship game, Notre Dame made millions and millions and millions of dollars. I wish I had the numbers. I think it's 13, 14 million just for making it as far as they did. It's definitely more than that when you sum everything up. But that money's one for the conferences, right? So the teams that make the playoffs rake in a ton of money for their conferences. The teams that win a game, make a ton of money for their conferences. The teams that make the semifinals, even more. Championship, even more. And then if you win it all, you're just racking up dollars, right? Notre Dame takes all of that because Ohio State, if they win the national championship or even if they get there, they're splitting that money across 18 different parties. Notre Dame just keeps it all. So Notre Dame is going to make millions. Marcus Freeman is locked in for a long time. I know he's receiving interest from the Bears, but I think he's staying at Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame is Marcus Freeman's home, and I think he's going to bring Notre Dame to the forefront of college football as he already has and do some great things there. The Fighting Irish are rising. This is a team, this is a program that's capable of a lot, and in my opinion, they're finally showing that they are capable of that much, and that's very exciting to see.